patch day. Had a long stream, played a lot of games, saved a couple that were fun, had something interesting to talk about in them. It's a game between myself on Khorne versus Inkar's Greenskins. And I took the buffed Soul Grinder. That's really the only changed thing on the Khorne side, though. One of the changed things on the Khorne side is that the the Skull Cannon ROR Hellforged Belarus got significantly nerfed. So Khorne has to play a little different now. No more kiting for them. It does make it more interesting in my opinion. On the other side, let's see. Did my opponent bring anything that really changed in the patch? Nothing I can see that got changed for the Greenskins, because they got mostly some Lord things. So not too much change from the patch, except for the units that are not here for Khorne. Right. So for Khorne, my build, 2 Chaos Warhounds of Khorne, 1 Chaos Knight. Then we have a Soul Grinder. Like I said, he did get buffed. He got some better combat stats. But I also brought Skulltaker. I wanted his Bloody Onslaught just to lower the armor and melee defense of Orc Boarboy Biggins if they existed, which my opponent brought none, but I was going to use those to help my Chaos Knights get through them. Forsaken of Khorne for the front line, mixed in with some Marauders. We have 2 Minotaurs with great weapons. That is about it. But the Biggin on the other side is pummeling my Minotaurs already. For the Greenskins, we have 2 Archers, one of which is Savage Orc Arboy, the other is Ruglin's Armored Orcs ROR, and then Orc Biggins and Savage Orcs for an entire front line. Night Goblin Shaman with Vindictive Glare and Itchy Nuisance, Skarsnik with his Rampage, and then Skarsnik's Prada and Spider the Bad Moon. And then we do have the Biggin, the biggest boy with the Swamp Things for 2 sources of terror. Forsaken frontline hits. And I do start off with Bloody Onslaught, giving Savage Orcs 0 armor, 0 melee defense as I charge in with my Chaos Knights and my dogs. The dogs are going to rout pretty quick. Savage Orcs are still a little spooky, scary. We're doing our best as the River Trolls come up here. My Soul Grinder is in here providing a bit of terror. There he goes, getting rid of those Savage Orcs for me. So those guys are already routing. Meanwhile, for the front line, Forsaken getting routed off by the Biggin already. Wherever the Biggin isn't, though, the Forsaken are doing quite well against those Savage Orcs. Now more Marauders pile into the Orc Biggins. Orc Biggins will hold for quite a while. Minotaur is going to jump in onto the Rogue Idol. Waz popped for him, though. And we're getting a little Vindictive Glare down the side, and Savage Orcs are hitting my Minotaurs in the back, so that is probably not wise. But I think my micro attention was up here, so I just threw my Minotaurs at the Biggin and hoped for the best. More terror routes coming in from the Soul Grinder, this time onto Orc Biggins. The Savage Orcs who routed previously are over there. I was trying to have some dogs maybe get through to them, but dogs got mucked up in the melee and unable to get through. Speaking of getting through, Forsaken breaking through that front line, now getting onto the Savage Orc Auror Boys, and these ones are rushing over to help the Minotaurs who are very low. They've taken some damage out on the Rogue Idol, but overall not a worthwhile trade for them. They did just get isolated and killed off. Itchy Nuisance down to lower my melee attack for all my units. And the Chaos Knights continue to run around, chase down Orc Biggins, run down Savage Orcs. It looks like I'm trying to give them attack orders onto those Savage Orcs, but there are a bunch of Greenskins in their way as they try and break free. The Soul Grinder and Skulltaker still doing their best. I realize this battle is getting away from me a little bit, so Skulltaker needs to break away from this flank fight and just go for some Lord sniping. As we have Marauders and Minotaurs killing Ruglin's Armored Orcs, those guys are going to rout soon. And Skulltaker is trying to push through these Orc Biggins to get towards Skarsnik. I was having some trouble breaking free, but I'm here now. Track down Skarsnik. With 73 melee attack, his 55 melee defense should not be much of a resistance, and Skulltaker is getting multiple hits on him. As Minotaurs finish their work, they are now needing to get away from the Orc Biggins that are flooding in. Skarsnik still getting sniped out by Skulltaker a little bit. And Forsaken crushed by the Biggin. Bounce power is slightly in the Greenskins' favor. He does Fermented Fungi, my poor Skulltaker, reducing his melee defense by quite a bit. But fortunately for me, I am rampaging, but at least Skulltaker staying focused. He's not getting distracted by the Orcs. He is still swinging at Skarsnik, which is what I need him to do. Make some Minotaurs unbreakable. Since they were going to rout anyway, it's very low. I just wanted them to fight the Swamp Things with the last of their strength. So the Swamp Things are getting crushed by our 2 very low Minotaurs and our Skull Crusher, our Soul Grinder, sorry. Not used to that unit. But yeah, the Unbreakable Minotaurs did their job and got the Swamp Things to rout before they themselves routed, so I'm pretty happy with that. While I have Chaos Knights who are very wounded in the background, running down anything that breaks away from the central formation, getting kills for my army passive, and all that stuff. Meanwhile, the Biggin got a nasty shot on Skulltaker, and I do need to path away, so Skarsnik made it to his bodyguard for now. But Skulltaker, like a shark looking for prey, does loop around the sides and goes after the Goblin Shaman, misses an attack, and Skarsnik comes after me. Skarsnik's maybe going to regret that as Skulltaker sees him getting away from the Rogue Idol, charges in, gets a hit, and the Rogue Idol comes over for a clap. And I don't know if he hit the Skulltaker or not. It was weird because his animation didn't make contact with me, but I thought I saw a little bit of damage there. So not sure. Soul Grinder is in the fight, fires a cannon at point blank range. Wherever the biggin is, there is trouble. Skulltaker's running away from the Rogue Idol. Bounce power is still slightly in the Greenskin's favor. Most of all of our infantry resources are depleted. Neither side really has that much infantry left. We have one half health orc biggin, and that is the most HP you're going to see in the rest of this game for the infantry. Skarsnik's fighting against the Soul Grinder, getting some good shots back on it. He is a little halberd character, though his melee attack is reduced by exhaustion and whatnot. Skulltaker jumps in onto Skarsnik while the Soul Grinder peels for me, keeps the biggin at bay. Skulltaker takes a couple nasty shots, both sides taking a lot of damage, and now the Soul Grinder Corn, fermented fungi rampaging him. He can't leave even if he wanted to. 11 melee defense, but the Rogue Idol's trying to get to Skulltaker, so he is just pathing into the Soul Grinder right now. He stops and he's finally going to swing at it. Gets a big hit onto that while I chase off Skarsnik, who is terror routing, getting good shots on him. But the Soul Grinder's taking a lot of damage. A lot of damage onto the Soul Grinder. I do kill Skarsnik. It is what I needed. So now the Greenskin's leadership is going to fall apart. You can see I give my Soul Grinder orders to leave. I give him orders to leave, and he's T-posing. He's T-posing. Now, if any astute viewers out there will realize that my Soul Grinder was flat out netted. He could not move. He wasn't like pushing and couldn't get there. He just wouldn't move because there is a single Night Goblin Shaman in his way. If anybody wonders why no one takes Soul Grinders of Khorne, it might be because they are terrible. Anyway, Soul Grinder of Khorne still can't move. He takes 2 or 3 shots from the Rogue Idol in the time it took him to turn around and move. And that's the Rogue Idol. Not exactly something known for moving quickly. It has a stat called Cumbersome. And it got 2 or 3 swings on my Soul Grinder before my Soul Grinder deigned to move. I hate Soul Grinders of Khorne. They're terrible. But I am using his cannon on those Orc Biggins, trying to just bait him into shooting. Now, the Soul Grinder of Khorne doesn't have a missile attack you can dedicate. He only has melee, quote unquote. So to get him to fire his cannon, you just have to point him in the direction of what you want to be shooting at and just hope he fires at it at the same time you do. Now, Skulltaker jumps into the Orc Biggins. I tried to order him away, but he was starting a charge attack, and now he can't path through all those Orc Biggins. He is pretty much netted. I know he's on a Juggernaut, but it's pretty much a horse character in this terror route. The Soul Grinder saved me there. I've been talking a lot of mad trash about it, but it did save me there. The terror route, it just caused those Orc Biggins, allowed Skulltaker to move with the terror route. So in the direction they were routing, Skulltaker could go. But Skulltaker now is locked in place, trying to push through like literally 2 Orc Biggins, and he can barely move. Horse characters / Juggernaut characters are not usually good combat characters, and if you ever wonder why, see that. So Skulltaker's running around the sides. Yeah, anyway, sorry. If you ever wonder why you don't see Horse Carl Franz or you don't see Horse Lewin or any of those things to save some money, it's because they need the mass of their flying mounts. Otherwise, they get just locked down in basic infantry and they can't move. Nasty shot onto my Chaos Knights of Khorne as they charge in. Big charge from everybody. Soul Grinder's in. We have Bloody Onslaught down to make sure that that biggin gets hit by everybody. 5 melee defense for it. But my Chaos Knights may not withstand. Looks like they're going to terror out. There they go, leaving just Skulltaker and the Soul Grinder all by themselves. All the Greenskins are routing those down to just the Rogue Idol to hold position. He's going to swing, gets a nasty shot on my poor Soul Grinder of Khorne, which has done a lot of work for me. Horn of Khorne has popped. We have Forsaken in as well. And the Orc Biggins are starting to rally. But I don't have any resources that can go chase them right now because we have to take out this Rogue Idol. If we turn away from it, the Soul Grinder will surely die without us anyway, and we'll have to come back and 1v1 it with Skulltaker. It's crumbling away, taking lots of damage, and Skulltaker should be able to win from this point. Should be. Some Orc Biggins are back. If that other Orc Biggin can rally, maybe they can have a bit of a defense as the Goblin Shaman starts to sprint back towards his boys. Maybe he can hide from the Skulltaker with his lads, but Skulltaker punts him into the air, gets damage. He's going to rout him. That should trigger army losses. There we go. So despite the Soul Grinder's occasional little janky movements where I couldn't get him to leave fights when I wanted him to, he did do good damage. He did great damage, and he was an amazing source of terror. So overall, he was good for this game. Glad I took him. I saw many terror routes that were crucial, and he caused all of them. He was my only source of terror here. Skulltaker, solid duelist, very strong duelist stats. I do actually like him in this matchup. He can take his motorbike for more mass, which people might be screaming at me. They're like, you got stuck in Orc Biggins, and you didn't take his motorbike, which can get through them really easily. True, but he sacrifices a lot of combat stats on the motorbike, so they're both good for different reasons. And I don't know if you want juggernauts or horses to be buffed, where it's like, I can push through orc biggins like nobody's business with a horse. That sounds really dumb, but then there's middle ground that still is debatable. I don't know, because a part of me wishes horse characters were better right now, but then another part of me goes, well, horses are relatively cheap, and if you can't lock them down in infantry and they can just cycle charge in and out indefinitely, that doesn't sound fun either. So, yeah. I mean, Skulltaker has a mount that can get through infantry. I opted not to take it. I suppose that's that. But I do like his stats better when he's on his Juggernaut, and he's a little cheaper. So, he did his job. He did very well. And to be positive on him, he got a lot of hits on infantry-sized characters, which is not always a thing you can do. Some characters are really bad at it, but he was getting consistent shots onto Skarsnik and the Shaman. Minotaurs did alright, despite the fact that I threw one of them to the Wolves. The other side, for in-cars, some of his Savage Orcs did well, some struggled a bit. Orc Biggins overall did quite nicely. His Archers did fine. The Biggin did great. Skarsnik did okay. GG's.
Roar. Subscribe, yes, yes.